were up 20% on our previous best school holidays, which was very, very appreciated after being closed for those months to get some money coming into our accounts instead of just all outgoing.
Stefan is back with a brand new Wize Talks episode. And today we have something that I like to think it's unique. This started with a simple question. How is the FEC environment working right now in the first country to have 0 COVID-19 cases? And luckily I got in touch with Grant Bracey-Brown, Managing Director at Megazone, which is an FEC train in New Zealand. And today we're going to speak about how New Zealand is working right now for the FEC industry, how business is working, how the customers are reacting, and many other things. First of all, Grant, thank you very much for joining us today. And let's start by finding a little bit of know-how about you. Who are you and what is Megazone about?
Yeah, for sure. Firstly, thank you for having me on this. And then, well, as you said, I'm Grant, and I'm the owner of the New Zealand group of Megazone, which is the New Zealand branch of the wider Zone group. In New Zealand, we have 15 locations, of which 2 of them my family owns directly. We unfortunately had 16 before COVID, but one of them has closed, didn't quite make it through. And then in terms of what Megazone do, we do sort of all of the support, repairs, and help with the marketing for all of our sites over here. In terms of my own venues, which is the Dunedin and the Hawke's Bay one. In the Dunedin, we've got 54 laser tag vests, an arcade, VR, UV, a UV mini golf, a cafe and a bar and function space, as well as a fully fledged retail game store with an online sort of web store. And then we do a little bit with inflatables as well, but most of it is the indoor entertainment centre market. And then in our Hawke's Bay location, it's trampolines, laser tag, and arcade. But across all of our New Zealand stores, we've pretty much got a bit of everything. We've got bumper cars, we've got climbing walls, escape rooms, you name it.
Okay. And as a quick question, what is the main audience, the main target group for those locations? Is it more of the locals, like family, like corporate groups, like young kids, or are you focused more on a tourist kind of audience?
Yeah, for sure. It really depends on the store, of course, because we have them in sort of all sorts of cities. Like we've got, for example, stores in both Queenstown and Rotorua, which are very tourist-heavy locations. But the majority of our sites, which aren't in those tourist centres, would sort of be a general target of your family's birthday party market with a sprinkling of sort of young adults and the sort of 20, 30-year-olds who are just sort of starting out work and still really like doing the sort of physical activities. All of our locations which have bars generally get a bit of an older crowd as well, because then they like to be able to come in and have a drink and do entertainment after work and things like that. And then for the stores which have retail, anyone's a customer.
Indeed. Okay, let's go straight to the main subject that we have today. Grant, when were you guys forced into lockdown and when were you allowed to reopen as a time frame?
Yeah, for sure. So New Zealand sort of made a stage system, which is pretty similar to, I think, what most countries around the world did, where we had stage 1, which is sort of no restrictions, stage 2, which was limited amount of people allowed, but sort of entertainment and stuff like that could still open. And then stage 3 was very, very limited. And then stage 4 was just everything which isn't a supermarket is closed. And so our entertainment stores were all closed for stage 4 and 3. Within stage 3, though, we were allowed to have staff in the building, but not customers. So a lot of our stores sort of did stuff to sort of prep for the reopening. In terms of dates, we were closed on March 26th. And then on April 27 was when we got back to stage 3. And then May 13, which is when we were allowed to have a sort of more limited opening. The restrictions, depending on the store, but always were 100 person maximum within the centre. And then all of the activities were limited depending on how much space we had. So in Dunedin, I think we were down to 24 players out of our 54, because that's the amount that we could fit in our maze safely, still within the new restrictions we had. And then we got to level 1, which was COVID-free effectively, on June 9th. But since then, there was a few little spikes, which had our Auckland stores closed for a couple of days and then put back to level 2. I think that was in late August, they got put back into level 2 and they're still in there, but the rest of the country is fully COVID-free. So all open as normal.
Okay. We spoke a while back and you were mentioning, and this for me sounded very cool, that in these few months, since you were allowed to reopen, for some of the locations, you had one of the best season ever since that location was first opened. Can we look into that a little bit more?
Yeah, for sure. So I think we were talking about the Dunedin location then, but I know it was pretty similar across most of our stores, apart from the 2 in those tourist centres, where we had sort of a couple of slow weeks with the stage 2, where people just weren't quite sure if they felt safe within our centres, and they were much more aware of all of the cleaning going on. But then pretty shortly after that, everyone sort of relaxed, and then thankfully we had pretty much the busiest school holidays we've had in the Dunedin venue, which meant we were up 20% in our previous best school holidays, which was very, very appreciated after being closed for those months, to get some money coming into our accounts instead of just all outgoing.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Just to double check, the Dunedin location was more focused on a younger audience, like kids, school groups, that kind of.
Yeah, Dunedin's one of our mixed centres because it's got the bar as well. So it's sort of got 2 main areas we do a lot of focus on, which is, the kids' birthday party scene, as well as the young adults for the work dues, and then university halls and things like that. With the reopening, we found that the large groups from the university and the work dues, they just weren't coming, but we had an increase in our other markets because I think people were stuck inside for so many weeks and sort of ran out of things to do. So really wanted the opportunity to go out and do things. And so 1 or 2 weeks into that stage 2, we were getting calls from people constantly asking, how many people can I book for? How many people can I come with? And then unfortunately, the rule was 10 people could book in a group, even though we could have more people playing. So there was lots of people trying to figure out how they could meet up with all of their friends and things like that.
Okay. Just as a quick thought, you were mentioning earlier about the prep aspects that you took care while you were in lockdown.
Yep.
Can you share with us a little bit more info about what kind of adjustments have you made to each location at large?
Yeah, for sure. So pretty much as soon as level 4 started, we had all our staff go home, and we did a really quick pivot at most of our locations to using online software and things like that. So we could still continue to do some work from home, even though we couldn't have customers. And so that was building things like marketing databases, updating them to make sure we had the right emails for schools, and just trying to build up as much information as we could. So as soon as we could open, we could tell everyone really quickly, as well as come through a lot of plans. So we spent time in stage 4 figuring out what we would have to change within the facilities to have the best sort of open spaces, move arcade games so we could have spacing, because we assumed, and of course they did, keep the sort of space restrictions around people's area. So we did a lot of sort of planning to figure out the best layout adjustments we could make for that. And then as soon as we got to stage 3, we had our staff back in site, even though no customers, putting up stickers, posters, sanitizer units, and all pretty much anything just to make our customers feel more safe when they came in, as well as made a whole lot of new policies about more litigious cleaning, like just having people clean all of the time in front of customers really clearly, just to make people sort of feel more safe. And then in the background as well, Zone released a new software feature which helped our stores as well, which allowed our packs to do automatic social distancing, so to enforce in the mazes those distances. So that allowed us to have more players in a lot of our locations, which otherwise we wouldn't have been able to sort of operate in, which was really helpful as well. So we then quickly made a whole lot of sort of social media content about that, so we could just tell customers, hey, look, our site is safe, please come back.
Okay, speaking about this one, almost everywhere around the world, people are a little bit hesitant when it comes to walking in an FEC, and at the same time, they're very careful to the cleanliness inside the location. How is this working in New Zealand?
Yeah, so on masks, it hasn't been a requirement in New Zealand to have masks because our COVID cases have always been really low. Some people do wear masks, but there's no sort of pressure, if you will. There's a little bit of an exception to that, is in Auckland, they did make people wear masks, but only on public transport.
Okay.
But within our centres, at least, masks were never really an issue. A few staff decided that they wanted to wear masks and they were supported, and no customers were frustrated or anything about that. The main thing in terms of what we noticed with the customers is, yeah, especially in those first 2 weeks, people were more careful. Smaller groups would come, but they very quickly sort of got used to the new normal of, we had sanitizers everywhere, really clear communication saying what we are doing, which made people feel comfortable. We did things like rotate through our laser tag vests, so we wouldn't use the same vests between games. The same for our other attractions, which had parts you touch, would just swap them out between each one, and they'd be very visible that we were cleaning it. And then we also had a check-in point by the door, which we had a staff on, which they would talk to the customer quickly to sort of explain, these are the rules, and then have a check-in process so the government could track if anything did go wrong, where people had been. But yeah, a few weeks in, and even though we were still enforcing all of the government regulations, definitely the guests sort of caring or energy in themselves into enforcing those quickly dropped when we just continued to get almost no cases. People, yeah, just sort of got used to it and didn't really mind as much because they weren't concerned of the general spread.
Understood. What about groups and private events? Has there been any major change in how those are working, in the number of people that are coming to book a group event, a group party, a birthday party?
Yeah, definitely through stage 2 there was, because we weren't allowed to take bookings of initially, I think it was 10 people, and then that got improved to 20 people a wee bit later in any single group. And since, yeah, like the Dunedin site 54, Mount Wellington, one of our other locations is 70 players per game, we very often get those big groups booking out a large chunk. And because we weren't able to take any groups bigger than that, and our player limits were limited, we did I'd have to turn away quite a lot of potential business because we weren't allowed to book those at that time. Birthday parties were a bit slower as well, but again, that was sort of made up for by general small family groups, clusters, a couple of families just coming together into the centre without sort of formal birthday party or function booked, because people just wanted to do entertainment. So it sort of balanced out quite well. Now, in the last sort of couple of weeks and leading up to Christmas, and since we don't have those sort of people restrictions, we're getting those bookings of 200, 300 people at a time in our stores again. So really happy that the restrictions are at a point that we can allow that in the sort of silly season around the holidays.
That's awesome. Okay, so what kind of estimations would you have, for example, for what's left of 2020 and for 2021 in terms of revenue and customers coming to the location? Are you seeing an increase, a stable line, or maybe things will go down again? Hopefully not.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that we'll continue to sort of experience some sort of growth within most of our stores in New Zealand, perhaps a little bit less than they would have expected otherwise. But because of the sort of closed market, we have a lot of people in New Zealand who would normally go to Australia, Europe, the United States for holidays and spend money over there, which now can't. So we're finding a sort of increase in local tourism, which has kept sort of numbers up across most of our stores. If we just ignore quarter two, every other quarter that we've had has been sort of on par with last year or has exceeded it. And so far, this quarter four for the close of the year at most of our stores has been really good. And then we've even had a couple of new stores open during this time. And I've said, they've picked up customers pretty quickly, which is fantastic.
Okay, that's awesome. In New Zealand, from what you're telling me, things are looking nice, especially for you. And congratulations. Probably there was a lot of management involvement and a lot of pivoting that you guys had to do to adapt and get things back on a straight line. But
we definitely probably talked to our staff more during that time than we would any other time of the year, with just constant sort of meetings and just trying to plan to make sure things were as smooth as possible and that customers were at least would be aware of anything that our stores had sort of done.
Okay, did you have any major challenges in terms of staff and employees in these last couple of months?
So we were very lucky that in New Zealand, the government did a wage subsidy system, which was a little bit different than at least the one in Australia. And from talking to some of our European friends, a bit different to there as well, where they gave an amount of money to the companies, depending on how many hours the person worked. So there was a fixed amount if they were 20 hours or less, and another fixed amount if they were 20 hours or more, regardless of whatever their total salary was, based on, I think it was just a little bit above minimum wage is what they had made those calculations for. But in any case, they gave all of our companies large amounts of sort of funds, which meant we could keep people employed. And in most cases, we could keep them employed at sort of pre-COVID income as well. Only a couple of people had to have their sort of wages dropped for like senior managers at some of the stores, which didn't have sort of enough flex in the money that they were given from the government to spread it around to make sure people got their pre-COVID income. But that did allow us to keep people, getting paid throughout the weeks of lockdown. And then they kept that going for a little bit into stage 3 and 2. So all the way through stage 3, my apologies, and a little bit into stage 2 and 1. For any company which hadn't got back to, I think it was 70% of their previous year's income at the same time, could continue to get this wage subsidy, which meant they didn't have to pay their staff. Effectively, the government was paying it for them, which allowed them to use the money coming in to pay off their other expenses. Because, we were still paying rent through this whole time. So money still goes out even if the staff are covered for. But because of that, most of our sites were pretty well covered. A few of our sort of bigger stores did have to let a few people go because it wasn't going to cover it for such a long time.
Oh, that's awesome. New Zealand sounds like a dreamy country to live in.
We were very lucky with, I think, I'm very thankful of how our government handled it. It did upset me at the beginning when we got told we were on level 1 and then 2 days later we were on level 4 and everything was closing at midnight. I think that was a bit sudden because we had just had a meeting, I think the day before we were saying, we're going to put in these safety restrictions and things. And then the next day we call everyone, hey guys, we're closed. So it was a bit of a sharp turn, but it worked. So I can't complain now.
Okay. What about the other APC operators around the world who aren't as fortunate to have a government as New Zealand? What will be an advice coming from you for our colleagues and peers from the industry around the world?
I think, use the time that you're closed to sort of work on systems. That's something that we found was really helpful throughout the time that during the time we changed a lot of our stores over to sort of integrated booking and point of sale systems, which don't cost very much for us to set up. And we just had the time now without being open to learn how it worked, train our staff on it. Like we changed our stores to Roller, which is a online booking point of sale membership system, which is now allowing us to do recurring memberships, gift cards, and all of these sort of things, which has really sort of helped us grow back faster because we're getting customers now signing up to pay us every month to use our facility in sort of like a Netflix-like subscription, which will hopefully just sort of build up our stability in future, as well as it's really helping us grow our sort of marketing database, because every time a customer comes in and books, we're getting their email, we're getting their birthday and things, so we can in future sort of keep remarketing to them. Apart from software, I'm obviously biased towards laser tag, so if you have spare money, laser tag has gone really well for us, so it's always a good sort of small attraction. But apart from that, I'd say the main thing is just don't give up, just sort of keep going, because what everyone's center is to your community is sort of like the town center, if you will, of where people go to mingle, talk to their friends, have fun. And like, we all know how bad lockdowns have been, so it's a really important time to be able to have a community center in their city, their town, for when they reopen, so people can come back to it.
Awesome. Thank you, Grant. Okay, so this was it. Thank you very much for taking part in this one and for all the input. For me, it's great to see that New Zealand, well, indeed, it was an amazing job managing COVID back there, but at the same time, it's great to see that the people are coming back and that the revenue is working and things are moving ahead, which is a glimpse of hope for everybody everywhere in the world. Things will get better in a few months. That's what I hope.
Yeah, hopefully.
Okay, man, thank you. And take care, and hopefully we will see each other at a trade show in 2021.
Yeah, as soon as we're allowed out of our country and other countries let us in, it'll be fun to travel again.
Okay, thanks, Grant. And speak to you soon.
Cheers, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye.